Yeah.
Oh well.
Because there's not that many of them around now.
Yeah.
Very few and far between.
Yeah.
I know of another one that went to Japan, so that's never likely to be seen in this country again.
Yeah.
It's nice to see it out here and where it should be.
Yeah. And how did your dad get involved with Jem then? I mean, how did that?
Well, Dad worked for a company called Dante with Robin Reed in Luton. Then Jem set up SpeedX, and then Dad left Robin Reed to go and work for Jem. And sort of from there on in, really, did a lot of development with Jem in the early days.
Yeah.
I think then Dad went back to work for Vauxhall, funnily enough, in the experimental department.
Yeah.
And Jem went off and did his own thing. But Jem and Dad have been friends for, right from that date.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously with the racing side of things, there was a lot of fun in the paddock and everything.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
But Dad worked with Jem on some of the early Marcoses, some of the development of it as well. Spent a lot of time with each other.
Yeah.
There then came a time when people started demanding more cars, I suppose, and so on, and you ended up with making the Volvo engine car was the next one in line, was it not?
Well, yes. What we did was we decided that we'd build another car, a better looking car, really. Frank Cosson had left some years previously, and Dennis Adams was in the company, and he drew this drawing on the back of an envelope, really. I thought, well, that looks great, So it was built as a GT car, not as a racing car, with luggage and all the rules and regulations that govern that, the spare wheel and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
And I chose a Volvo engine because it's got a good bulletproof, really, as it turned out.
Yes, very good engine.
And I went to BMWs, but they wanted the engine put on its side almost, and that's all. Wouldn't have fit into the wooden chassis so well as the Volvo. Volvo was more simple, and that's what we do. We built over 100 cars with a Volvo engine in it.
Yes.
Yes.
But tell me, Dennis was, when I was involved with Marcos in the mid-60s, he was working in the workshop, as far as I recall.
Yeah.
I'm just interested how he became a stylist. I mean, that's.
Well, he didn't become a stylist. He had a flair. He had a natural flair, which I tried to exploit with him, but he did a bit. But in fact, the first car I ever drew, which was the 1800, is a shape that everybody knows and everybody likes.
Yes.
And it's so good.
So he wasn't sort of employed as a stylist. He just happened to come up with.
He happened to be living in Grafton Avon. Well, he didn't actually at the time. He moved down from
Because he was in
Cambridge.
Luton when I. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. He was at Luton. He was living in Cambridge.
So he came down with the car.
But he drew this iconic.
Yes,
shape.
it's brilliant, and of course it stood the test of time.
That's right. Yeah.
Because it's still.
It was built really to be to fit me. This was very important because I had to drive it.
Yes.
Obviously.
Well, it's quite important.
And it was a great advantage because all the other cars were coming out, especially Lotus, were all built for legless dwarfs to drive. And I couldn't drive them. I couldn't get in them, let alone drive them. Anybody who was over 6 foot something or other, they couldn't get in it.
No. And you can certainly get. And you designed this wonderful idea where the seats are fixed as part of the structure of the car, but the pedals all move back and forth on an adjuster.
Well, we did that for the same reason as the height. You could get a really comfortable seating position, and then you could adjust the pedals to meet the feet.
It's surprising nobody'd done that before.
Well, we have, because they're doing it now regularly now in Jaguars and all sorts.
Yes. Did you have a patent on it?
No. According to British Lady, and they had one, and they wrote to me and said, "We've got a patent on this adjustable pedal system." I didn't take a blind bit of notice. I got on with it because BMC in those days were such a shambles.
Yes.
And nobody ever bothered with me. I just got on and did it. And it's still being used now.
Yes. So the 1800 wasn't built as a race car, but people have raced them since.
Oh
then.
yeah.
And
Well, it was built as a GT car with racing in mind
right.
all the time because of my racing background with Austin Simmons and that. We kept that in the back of our mind all the time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as soon as we got them going, we got some odd wealthy customers started working on putting quick engines in and close ratio boxes and one thing or another. And then they became very competitive.
And the other thing about the 1800, which I didn't realise until recently, is it was, like the early ones, it was homologated. So you can do, as
Historic racing.
Steve Minoprio has done, enter it in a lot of historic racing events abroad and in the UK, which is quite attractive. I must admit I'd never considered the 1800 as a race car, but judging by the performance these people have been getting from them, they're quite competitive.
Well, it's quicker than a Lotus Elan.
Is it?
Yeah. That's with the two, see the Volvos can go out to 2 litre, 1800 actually.
Yes.
1800. So it's got a bit more torque, and also it isn't any heavier than the not when they
Lightened it.
lightened it up a bit. So that's why, and it's okay. It's got a live axle which works very well.
Yes.
Steve, how long have you had this car? I bought it in at the end of '96, and I found it originally in the States. It was a car which had been shipped out to the States, belonged to a guy in Atlanta, Georgia, and I bought it just when the Olympics were on there. So I had a hell of a struggle to get any transport to get it out of there, but eventually it came back about 3 months later, and I got Dave Metley to rip it apart and build it up to a full FIA spec.
Yeah, and it's a Volvo engine car, so
Oh yes, it's the 1800 Volvo, and the decision I had to take was that the previous year I'd been racing another 1800 which had been part modified, and I could have done a full FIA job on that, but it would have meant throwing away a lot of work that had already been done, and it was quite a nice car.
Yeah.
So I decided it was better to start from scratch, and I bought this street car for very little money in the States, and we really went through it from start to finish.
And it's right drive as well. So it's right drive. So
Oh yes, it is now, yes.
I wasn't it?
No, it was left-hand drive when I got it.
But the big advantage of the 1800 Volvo engine cars is that they're homologated, of course.
Yes.
Which means you can do all the international meetings.
Absolutely, which is what I've done over the years, and I won the FIA Historics Championship in 2001.
That's good, excellent.
In fact, overall, if there is such a thing, I think I was the only driver undefeated out of 400 and some in the total competition. But anyway, that was very good, and we did endless miles that year. I think I won it on motorway miles rather than anything else across the continent. But it's been very reliable. It's a very nice car to drive. It helps the driver as far as possible. I mean, if you twist its tail too far, it'll like any other car. But generally speaking, you can come to terms with these cars, very easily, and they will help a driver out.
How did it compare with the one you raced in '62?
Oh, it's much more of a car. It's got better suspension, and bear in mind that also that in those early days in the 60s, I think I was running on really crap tyres and not proper racing tyres as far as I remember, and also we didn't know anything at all about how to set up a car. I hadn't got a clue. I thought oversteer and understeer was where you held your hands on the wheel. But no,
We've come a long way since then.
Well, it was a great learner, those days for all of us, we were all rank amateurs really.
Oh, yes.
And it taught us all a great deal. And so at the end of '63, after I'd had a season with an Elva Mark VII, I gave it all up and went off to get an honest job and get married and get a mortgage and children and things like that. And I didn't come back to it until 1995, when Jem Marsh rang me up, Tim Lalonde and Jem Marsh rang me up and said, "You're coming to Silverstone, to Coys." So I said, "Well, what's Coys?" And he said, "Oh, historic racing, you'll love it." So off I went. And I had such a fantastic day. Lots of old mates I hadn't seen for years. None of us had changed a bit. Beautiful cars. And I was singing like a canary when I came away from it. And you know, where do I sign and how do I join? And what about getting a car? And of course, Jem steered me towards Dave Methley, who found me a car. And off I went the next season. And started from there. So 96 till now. 13 years. And of course, the funny thing is that every car I've driven since I restarted is infinitely quicker than anything I ever drove in period. And the tyres are better, and all the suspension kit is better, and you're really into a grown-up style of racing. I love it, and a lot of the work I can do myself on this car, but anything serious, I would always get Methley or an equivalent to do for me.
Yes.
But by and large, you know, I would in 2001 when I did my trip round Europe. I did it all myself, and now and again you get a helping hand from others in the paddock. But by and large, you're on your own.
Yes.
And you can do it with this car. I think the most important thing any racer has got to have is a good trailer and plenty of short pieces of wood.
Well, if you have a Marcos, you should have plenty of wood.
Well, you should,
This is a
yes.
steel chassis, is it?
No.
It's a wood chassis.
No. Oh yeah, this is a wood chassis.
I'll leave it.
Yeah, this is actually a new chassis. It was re-chassied 2 years ago. Well, the original chassis eventually gave up. Well, it had sat out in the street, you know, for most of its life, and then I'd raced it for another 10 years, and it had had enough. And it was starting to delaminate and that, so I got it all redone, which has also meant that it's come in absolutely, and I've spent a lot of time taking weight out of the car as well. Little things, you know, substituting alloy bolts for steel bolts in no-load applications.
Go about it.
Well, I spent a lot of time on this, and the result is the car is actually fractionally under 600 kilos. And I don't think any other 1800s get within 15 or even 20 kilos. And that's a combination of my work and the lightweight chassis. And it's a great car.
Well, I know you've had a lot of fun with it.
I have over the years, yeah.
Now, I was creeping down and the car was creeping.
And then from the 1800, I wasn't going to touch on Mini Marcos at the moment, although there's a lot of people interested in them. I'm just trying to go down the mainstream, if you like.
Yeah.
From the 1800, then a number of other engine options became available.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the straight 6 Volvo engine car.
Yeah,
Which-
we did that for the American market.
For the American market, yes.
To get through the regulations of the smog and all that nonsense. And but that wasn't. It was okay, but the engine was too heavy for the car.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, because it's a straight 6. It weighed a lot more than a 4-cylinder engine.
Yes, it would do, yes. And then, but I have a couple of friends in the States with the 6-cylinder engine cars. They seem very happy with them.
Well, they're boulevard drivers, I expect.
I don't like. I better be careful what I say about it because they might well see.
They might
this,
buy a
but-
book.
Yes.
I'll see the video.
But then my car's got a V6 Essex Ford engine, which when you talk about weight is
It's very
another
heavy.
matter altogether. It's seriously heavy motor. Apparently, it was designed originally to be used as a diesel, which accounts for the fact that the thing weighs half a ton. But that came in what, the late 60s.
Yeah.
Was that concurrent with with the Volvo six-cylinder car, or was it?
Well, no, we did the 1600 and 1500, I forget.
Oh, of course, with the Ford engine.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
yes.
Ford engine. We started with Ford then.
Yes.
Ford's image changed, so we were able to, rather than have a Volvo engine, we could go to Ford,
Yes.
because Ford's image totally changed.
Yes.
And the engines were much cheaper than a Volvo.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Engine and gear. I mean, the gearbox was rubbish on the Ford, but it wasn't too bad with the overdrive. But even then, it was not as good as the Volvo gearbox.
Well, it's a trouble. You can't really easily make a Volvo gearbox with a Ford engine, I guess, and they probably wouldn't sell you them separately.
It wouldn't work. No.
No. Well, quite a lot of. I mean, the development of these cars. It must have absorbed a huge amount of time and work. I mean, it's not a 5-minute job designing and building cars.
No, not. Especially if they're made of wood.
But by '69 you'd good enough.
'69 we changed the metal. We only changed the metal because of the customers. Really, they couldn't understand. The older generation who were brought up during the war with Mosquito aircraft and things, they understood it straight away. They never queried a wooden chassis, and as time went by, of course, people were saying, wooden chassis, what's that? And which is why we changed to a metal tube chassis. And the cost as well, because
It's much cheaper to produce, wasn't it? Labour-wise.
the metal chassis was.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there was 380 odd bits of wood in the Marcos, all had to be glued together separately, so you can see it.
Yes.
The labour-wise it was horrendous.
Yes. Well, it didn't.
It didn't go rusty.
No. Okay, so and then you had an attempt with the Mantis at a four-seater.
Well, that was designed as a 2+2. Right, we made 32 of them. We sold them all, but for some reason or other, people think that it was caused a lot of trouble in the Marcos system. It didn't. They worked. I mean, it was another Dennis Adams styling. Did quite a bit of styling on it, but another guy actually built it.
Well, it was an interesting diversion, but not presumably very successful financially. But
but now, of course, the price is going up on them now.
yeah. Well, the rarity value.
Yeah, well, a lot of them have been broken up and messed around.
Yeah. So we've got as far as the late '60s. When did this idea of doing this Le Mans car come into it, or have I jumped ahead too far?
Which Le Mans car?
Because there was a serious attempt at Le Mans at one stage, wasn't there?
Well,
or was that much later?
No, not really. I always wanted to do Le Mans. We did Le Mans in '62. Private entered the car, which was going very well. The oil screw came out of the rev counter drive, and the oil ran out of the engine. In those days, you weren't allowed to add oil to an engine. They changed the rules later on, so we had to just put it on the trailer and go home. But then things, a couple of years went by, and I said, well, we've got to do another.